In the world of women's mountain biking, Shredly is a well-known name. Chances are you either have a pair of Shredly mountain bike shorts or you have a girlfriend that does. But it wasn't always that way. Once upon a time, women were still wearing boring black mountain bike shorts, and Shredly was just a Kickstarter campaign. In this podcast interview, I had the opportunity to sit down with Ashely Rankin, the founder and owner of Shredly. She shares the origin story of Shredly, what makes the brand special, and where the company is headed in the future. Stick around for an interview you do not want to miss. We'll get going. Ashely Rankin, thank you so much for being here today. We are going to talk all about Shredly, but before we do that, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself as a person? Who is Ashely?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, by the way. So lovely to see you.
Yeah.
So I am kind of your average person. Like, I think people have this idea that because of Shredly, I came from the world of mountain biking. I came from racing. I was a professional rider. I wasn't any of those things. I grew up in Colorado, and I grew up mountain biking with my family. I didn't really fall in love with it on my own until college, and I started to do it a lot with my girlfriends. And so I had a degree in apparel design and production. I also got a degree in business marketing, and I was living in Colorado and kind of riding a lot with my girlfriends, and couldn't find anything that we liked. And together we dreamt up the Shredly short. So I just kind of love telling people that story, because people that don't know that I didn't come from the apparel industry, like I was just one of us that was riding and thought of something that we kind of all wanted and needed and pursued that. And an idea became kind of a side hustle, and then a side hustle became a brand. And it's not who I am, but I didn't start from anything except for having an idea.
I actually love that. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a topic that comes up quite often, is this idea of like imposter syndrome and women feeling like I don't belong in the bike industry, or I'm like not good enough. And here's an example, like we're all like regardless just regular people, right? And everybody belongs to be here if they want to be here.
Yeah, exactly.
So nowadays I feel like all women in mountain biking know about Shredly. It's like very well-known brand, but obviously that wasn't always the case. How did Shredly get started? What was the space like when you created it, and why did you feel like it was a need?
Yeah, I love this question because I was just I found this picture of my girlfriends and I in 2010, and we were all cracking up because we literally look like we're from the 80s or 90s. So that's what the space looked like then. Like, yeah. It was mostly kind of black, nothing super bright, nothing really fun. So there was not a lot going on in the space. And actually, when we started, it was after the Great Recession, and women's brands, or excuse me, brands were cutting their women's lines. So the space for women specifically was not growing. Women were not as well represented in the space then as they are now. And even just the participation of women in general. Like, now there's tons of women's clinics to pick from. You can go on women's retreats. Like, there's so much available, and that really just wasn't happening then. I mean, like, you participated in the sport if it's something you chose to do, but there weren't very many factors drawing women into the sport. And I feel like the apparel really reflected that. So it was such an opportune time for us to start, because there wasn't necessarily anything else fun or exciting or noticeable going on. And so for Shredly to launch with like bright colors and fun patterns and thoughtful design that was designed by three women with all of their, like must-haves in a short, which for us, we knew that it needed to like feel good, fit good, and look good. And those seemed like pretty simple things, but for some reason, I think in the outdoor industry in general, but specifically in bike apparel, that was an afterthought. That was really not happening. And it was very behind mainstream fashion. So it was really fun to feel like, okay, I can bring my love for fashion and design into this little segment of the market. And it was very well received. We started, so to talk about how we started, it was just an idea. My friends and I were on a bike ride, and we all were lamenting about what we had just talked about. So we designed what we thought was the perfect short. And I did have a degree in apparel design, so I had the fundamental skills to kind of pursue this idea. but I knew nothing about owning a brand. I knew nothing about running a business. I had worked for some small companies, so I had kind of seen that entrepreneurial spirit, but I really didn't have any idea what I didn't know, which was good. My naivety really helped me because when you don't know what you don't know, it doesn't scare you. If I knew what I know now, I probably would have been a lot more intimidated. So because I just didn't really know, it was like just picking off these little pieces. And I decided, okay, you're going to start by just accomplishing one thing a day. And I had a full-time job at the time. So it was very much like one thing a day was what was reasonable. And so it was like finding someone who could make the samples, finding someone who could help me with sourcing and going to fabric shows. And so it took me really like a year to go through this whole process, like 8 months to source the fabric, a couple months to get the samples. And it was really just like, I knew it was a good idea. So I was careful about who I talked to, but I ended up talking to the right people that ended up knowing the person who knew the person who connected me to the first factory that we worked with. So it was really cool, small little connections like that. And then suddenly, not suddenly, but like all of a sudden I kind of realized like I'm starting a brand, I'm starting a business, and what does that really mean? Um and how do you really go about that? I didn't know, but I knew just to piece together certain things like, okay, we're going to need manufacturing, we're going to need funding. And this is after the Great Recession. So traditional funding was really hard to come by. And things like Kickstarter were really new and scary. But I saw this one really good Kickstarter campaign and I was inspired to try that method. So we launched a Kickstarter campaign in the middle of winter. We didn't have any social media for the business. So the same day that we launched our Kickstarter campaign, we also launched all of our social media accounts. So it was like this big, you know, for us, that was like the big coming out, like,
Yeah.
here we are, let's see where this goes. And our Kickstarter campaign was successful, which was the first step in kind of proving that there was demand for the product. Because you tell your friends and your family, and of course they tell you that's such a great idea, they want to support you.
Right.
But to put it out in the world where people can share whatever opinion they want with you, that was when I kind of knew, like, okay, this has legs. And at the same time our Kickstarter campaign was going on, I was also just driving around on the weekends to any bike shop that would meet with me with my, first run of samples. And we were able to get 17 bike shops to come on board that first year as well. So with a successful Kickstarter campaign and then 17 stores, that was the first year of Shredly. And since then, it's just been like this steady growth. I then went to a part-time job and then a full-time job. So the evolution of Shredly for me was also a very personal evolution for me in my life because I was Shredly. It wasn't me and a team. I didn't raise money to start the business. I didn't really have a model to follow because we were doing things differently than anyone else in the space. And so it was such a great learning experience. It was scary at times. It was really exciting at times. I kind of just didn't know um, even a lot of like the milestones that we had reached until I started to talk to other people in the industry. And after our first year, um, I formed some really great relationships with some good buyers in the industry, and they would say, you're kind of freaking the big brands out. Like they're all paying attention. They're like, who is this brand? And so to reflect now, so we are 11. This was, 11 years ago. So to look back and kind of see this story unfolding since I just wasn't aware of so many things, it's really cool to see like how much we did impact the industry and how much we impacted other people's product and how there are other companies now that are like following kind of in our footsteps. So it's been such a cool journey, but it really is just cool to see how many more offerings there are for women, how much more the industry is now pulling women into the sport. Like I was saying, it didn't feel like it was really doing that. And so there has been such a paradigm shift in my mind. And there's still a lot of things to do to make that better, provide equal access to a lot of people. But it really has changed so much in 10 years that I feel like it's more than 10 years of change. So it's really cool to see.
It is interesting how you mentioned, like other brands copying you. And I do see like a lot of those big brands now that they'll like try to kind of like create a Shredly looking print, or now they're like using the yoga waistband that you first came out with.
But I think the most interesting thing is it still feels like an afterthought. Like this is like one product we've created for women, as opposed to Shredly. It's like we have all these offerings for women, and that's kind of, I think, what makes you unique and special.
Yes, and that's think what still sets us apart. We can still do things that the bigger brands can't do, that are just trying to satisfy, like, okay, here's for that one Shredly buyer. You know, we can still address the market as a whole with varying products, and there's different degrees of Shredly buyer. So it's fun for us to also kind of segment our customer and see how wide reaching we can be with our product.
When I started mountain biking, which was like 1 million years ago, it was like you mentioned that there was only black shorts. That was pretty much the only option. And there were actually, it was even hard to find ones that were like sized for women. Like I think there were a couple of times where I bought extra small men's shorts because that's, well, that was available at my local bike shop. As you started designing shorts for women, aside from the prettier styles, what else did you find that like women need in a mountain bike short that might be different from a men's mountain bike short?
Yeah. So, well, women, I feel like, are so much more in tune with the three things that I mentioned: fabric, fit, and function. And I think men sometimes can be more focused on function. I think that's actually changing as there's been so many more brands in the market space, and there's other brands outside bike that are offering really great technical apparel. But I think like women are so much more particular, and we tend to come in so many different shapes and sizes in different areas of our body. Like you can have different shape in your tummy, you can have it in your hips and thighs. You know, we can distribute our weight so much more differently. And I think this idea of like an athletic body for so many years, even in men's products, like what did an athletic body look like? That doesn't mean lean, that doesn't mean slim fitting. And so for us, when we were designing the first short, what we knew is that using stretch in our fabric was crucial, because that would give us the ability to fit more shapes than having more styles. So when we knew we were going to launch with one style of short, having stretch in your fabric gave you more versatility. And so I kind of compare it to the Gap. Like we could have as many styles as the Gap because there's different body shapes, there's different fit preferences. And since we realistically can't do that, you have to find silhouettes that work for as many body styles as possible. And so that was really our goal. It was cool, the first short that we had, to see it on so many different body shapes and styles and see it working. Because of some things, like we were intentional in the design, like the thickness of the waistband. We were intentional of the length. We were intentional with the fabric for those reasons. So kind of like finding that magic mix of like, how much can we get out of this one style? And then super helpful to see it on as many bodies and as you can, and decide, okay, what's the next most common style that we need? Which is why we launched the short with the stretch waistband that you referred to earlier, because we knew that we needed a higher rise. We knew we needed a little bit more articulation. And it's funny because we have customers who it's polarizing your fit and your closure. We have learned women are very partial to one or the other. So really learning our customer and then the addressable market that we're not meeting their needs. That's kind of what steers the product direction.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I love that yoga waistband. It's like all I wear, I have a couple pairs, and that's like all I wear anymore, because it works on my body, and maybe it doesn't work on everybody's, but it's like the first really great design that I found that works well for me.
Oh, I love hearing that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I should mention too, because those are like the only shorts I wear every day. They've gone through so many wash cycles, and they hold up so well. That's something I think that's really impressive about your shorts too, is that, I mean, I have pairs that I've been wearing like weekly for years now, and they still look brand new.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Good tester. I know where to send stuff for testing.
So obviously being able to wear a pair of shorts for a very long time, it makes them more sustainable. What else have you done to try to address sustainability?
Yeah, so this was actually, this is just something I didn't talk too much about who I really am personally in the beginning. I
Mhm.
actually don't get asked that question very
Okay.
often, so that was a good one. I'll do better with that next time. But so sustainability is just huge in my personal life. Like I'm kind of a freak about saving every plastic bag that I can, and my boyfriend jokes that he's not allowed to buy Ziploc bags. Just like there are things ingrained in my life where I think that we all make an impact, and so having a business that makes an impact for me is a very serious responsibility. Um, and I would rather do it than someone else who doesn't care. So being very conscientious about every detail and how it impacts everyone from start to finish in the supply chain in the local areas where the factories are to where we end up getting the goods. And so before it was kind of the common thing to do, we made a commitment to source only recycled or sustainable materials for all of our new styles. And so that can prove challenging when you're looking for certain technical fabrics to perform a certain way. So in some instances, we've developed our own, like our Eco Fab line of tops is developed actually here in the States. And we couldn't find exactly what we were looking for. So we worked with someone that could help us make that. So we have last year, 93% of our line had recycled materials in it, and we'll just continue to keep increasing that year after year where possible. It's not always possible to find the exact thing that you need, but making a conscious effort to seek it out or develop it if you can is crucial to our product roadmap. And then just the entire process, like being very thoughtful about the process and where you can impact and make a positive change. I really admire Patagonia as a business, and so we kind of always look to them. A big thing for us was packaging. Like we really don't want to package our garments in plastic bags. And so we did a lot of research to find what our options were, and then read this case study by Patagonia about why they still do it. And so it's really nice to have other leaders in the industry that are making great headway, that are a good model for businesses that are small like mine with limited resources, to kind of look to see what is the standard. And then it's in some ways, I feel like we kind of did start to set the standard for apparel in our little niche industry, because nobody was really making a concerted effort to do so much in the recycled arena. And that's been forefront for us for like 5 or 6 years now. So it's not a new thing.
Yeah. You've also left manufacturing in the US. Why have you chosen to do that?
Well, so we did that for 10 years. Shudley
Okay.
was started in the US, and we manufactured everything in the US until COVID.
Okay.
And that affected our entire business model. Because of that, for the longest time, direct was our main focus, and we were not as focused on growing the wholesale side of things. When COVID happened, we lost about 30% of our manufacturing here in the States. They just didn't open back up after they closed. And then prices skyrocketed. People's supply chains got interrupted. And so we got to the point where we weren't going to be able to finish our projects here. It was going to take like 11 months to get what we needed in 3 months. And then our prices were going to be so absurd that even direct was going to start to be a little bit of a challenge for us. So we actually did shift. So now we have production in Asia, Mexico, and the US. And we'll continue to shift that because it's what makes most sense for, number one, our product, and number two, just we learned with COVID, diversifying your supply chain is actually a very smart thing to do, not really have all of your eggs in one basket. And it's actually been, it has been a really great move, and it's been a surprising evolution for us because we were so committed to that for so long. But it's given us capability for better technology. Our biker sham, which is one of our best selling products this year, has a lot of bonding in it and laser cut edges that really isn't feasible in the States. And so it's allowed me as a designer to kind of open my, to expand my horizons in terms of what's capable with design. And we work with really wonderful teams that work with really great factories. And so getting to know the people firsthand and seeing that they're incredibly hardworking, they're very skilled, and they're incredibly meticulous. So it's actually improved things for us a lot. Manufacturing in the States is challenging in some ways because they are mostly small batch. And I love that because that's how we grew up. So still working with those factories whenever we can, our relationships that we'll really want to keep when possible. but it was like the next step in Shredly kind of growing up and needing bigger capacity, better technology. So we have finally made that shift, and that was last year, and a little bit the year before, kind of rebuilding our entire supply chain, which was a big deal. It's almost like rebuilding, half of your business. Yeah. There were definitely some learnings.
One thing that makes you unique is like your huge range of sizes, starting at 0, and I think I saw like up to a size 24. Is that correct?
Yeah.
At what point did you decide that you were going to try to focus on being so size inclusive? What was the decision-making process behind that? And I mean, I know from other folks I've talked to that it's very expensive, right? It's like cost prohibitive to do that. So could you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. Well, I just knew. So when I first started Shredly and I said I'm going to make women's products for women, I really had to make some decisions in the beginning about what that meant. And one of the first things that meant was we were going to go with numeric sizing, because there's only an inch difference in between each size. So the likelihood of someone finding their size is greatly increased, because when you're in an alphanumeric system, so extra small to 3x, 4x, there's about 3 to 4 inches in between each size. So a lot of people get stuck in between and they can't, they're a schmedium, they can't ever find a size that fits them. So that was one of the okay. So that was one of the first things that I decided. And that was unique for the space too. Most people in outdoor and in bike specifically were not doing that. And when we started, we started with 0 to 12. That was our first year. I didn't fit in that size range. I am on the petite side. So I actually didn't have shorts that fit me the first year. And I just knew, like, okay, we have to start here, and then we're going to expand as we can every year. And so very quickly, every year we added sizes, until we got to 00 to 24. And that doesn't mean that that's where we're going to stop, but we watch the data and we see, we're still trying to learn what the right amount is for all of the fringe sizes, so you have a bell curve where you always sell the most of your median sizes. And that's where brands have focused. And some brands only intend to do that. We, as a women's brand, aren't doing our job if we're not meeting all women's needs. And so there are still people that fall outside of our size range, and we hear that and we listen to that, and we will continue to improve upon that as we can. But I'm really proud of the range that we offer now, because it is a bigger range than any other. We have more sizes and more styles than any other brand. And so we are really making a concerted effort. And being a small business, you can make those decisions. If you had to answer to someone at the top, they would look at your SKUs that are not selling, that are not profitable, and then they would deem those as, like slow movers that probably need to be cut. We just view that as a whole piece of our pie. Like, this is our pie. This is how it's divided. We'll make less of those fringe sizes, but we'll always offer them because it gives our product validity. And that's really important. It's really important that everyone is represented, even if they don't sell the same number of units. And we also don't cost them differently. They do cost more. They take more fabric. They take up more space on the cutting table. And it means that we've just had to take on costs. You said it can be cost prohibitive. It can be. So we have to do multiple cuts. Whereas cutting rooms, it depends on how they're set up, but they love to lay it out once and cut everything at the same time. If you have to lay it out twice, you're using twice the table space, you're using twice the table time. And that's just something that we've agreed to over time, that yes, we're going to pay more for this because it's really important to our business model and our customer.
One of the things you've created in the last couple of years is a youth collection, which I absolutely love, because there's really not a lot of youth mountain bike clothes out there in the first place. And then secondly, there was nothing for girls before. I have another website called Rascal Rides, which is family cycling. And people would always ask, what do I buy for my daughter? And like the best option was like the Zoic Ether shorts, right? Which were boys shorts, and they came in black, and that was it. And that was the option that girls had. What has the reception been like to that youth collection?
So that was our number one request for product, was youth. So we were really excited to launch that as well. It's been exciting. It's been really fun, like to see how many moms and girls get to Mommy and Me now, or to just see like how many girls are in like the most adorable little shorts you could imagine. It's so fun.
They're so cute.
But it is so cute, but it's really interesting because and it's not a vanity thing, but we've talked a lot about this. But I said I didn't fall in love with mountain biking until I was in college. I did it my whole life with my parents because that's what we did as a family, but I didn't love it. And there were certain things that I didn't love about it. And one of the things I didn't love about it was the clothes. I wasn't excited to put on like these black shorts that were so tight I couldn't get them on and off very easily. And so even it doesn't matter what age you are, but to be excited to put something on that makes you happy or makes you feel cool or is just something that you like because of the colors of the pattern, like that makes such a difference. And so talking about like drawing more women and girls into the sport, it's really fun to be able to offer something that's maybe just a little nugget that's another reason for them to get on their bike or another something for them to get excited about. And some, like little girls love, they have their favorite shorts, they have their favorite shirt, they have their favorite stuffy or whatever it is. And so to be part of that for little girls when they're riding has been really, really fun.
That's amazing. I'm actually reading a book. I'm having her on the podcast too, but Christine Yu, and she wrote a book called Up to Speed. I don't know if you've read it, but it's about women's sports science. And one of the things that she really pushes is the importance of like getting girls started in these sports young, because when you get started in the sports young, it actually like makes neural pathways in your brain where it's like the movements are easier for you later in life. You're less likely to get injured and all of these things, which, I mean, I always just thought like, oh, we should get them excited about it so they continue through life. But I never had thought about like the actual neuromuscular component to it. So I think that's really cool. An important step in getting young girls into the sport.
Yeah, very interesting. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, the riders, like it's insane to already see the next generation of riding,
Yes.
but the ones that are on Strider bikes now, it's just insane. I have nephews, and to see the difference in their confidence and just, they take off on a pedal bike the first time. It's very different than when we got our training wheels taken off,
Oh, totally.
Having Striders and biking at such a young age. Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, my son is 10, and this was his first year racing downhill. And I actually decided to do one of the downhill races with him, and they let you self-seed like your order. So I had him start behind me because it's 30-second between riders. And I was like, well, if he starts 30 seconds behind me, he'll probably catch me, but at least it'll just be him. It won't be like some other really aggro dude, right? And the whole way down, I was so sure he was going to catch me. And I crossed the finish line ahead of him, and he came in right behind me. So he caught me within 30 seconds, which shows like he's already such a better biker than me. But yeah, it's like really amazing what happens when you start young.
It is. So we've been offering retreats, and a big number of the women attending our retreats or clinics, just in general, like in my experience, is our moms who want to be able to keep up with their kids, who like have always kind of ridden, but they realize what you are experiencing, that like they are very quickly going to be fast and really good, and I want to be able to keep up, and it's so cool.
That's awesome. Within the bike industry, have you found any other women that have like really inspired or helped you along? And what has it been like being a woman in the bike industry?
Yeah, so because I mentioned that I didn't come from the industry, it has been a very interesting experience because I very much was an outsider kind of coming in, and I very much felt like an outsider coming in, not because people didn't include me, but just because I didn't know. And I am so impressed by women who have kind of made like biking is their life. Shredley is obviously a huge part of my life, but I wouldn't say that I'm a mountain biker before I'm anything else. It's one of the things that kind of makes me who I am. So to meet people in the industry where that is like who they are through and through, and biking is their blood, or like biking is their community, biking is their church, biking is their, kind of religion, their everything to them is really cool to see. And I think that there's some women in the sport that are really pushing it forward. There are so many that I admire entirely because they literally kind of exist, I think, to get more women into the sport. Shanna Powell is one of those people that I can think of. She's one of our ambassadors, and she's also a coach and just a gem of a human being. But she's an example of like, she kind of lives and breathes biking, and she couldn't be more welcoming to people in the sport, and she couldn't be more kind about it either. Her intentions are incredibly genuine. So she's just an example. I have too many to mention, but there are some women doing some really cool things in the sport for the true, authentic, genuine purpose of really getting other women in the sport and sharing this thing with them. That it's really amazing how many women you meet. And I'd be curious if other sports are the same way, but where like biking has been their savior or biking has changed their life or it's helped them out of a tough time in their life. And, we hear a lot of stories like that. Um, and I'm kind of just impressed actually that the sport lends itself to that for so many people. There's such a communal um, nature to it that I really love.
Okay, one question I have. This year, one of the saddest things that happened was the Machines for Freedom shut down. They were bought by Specialized and then were dissolved. What, as an insider inside the industry, what did that kind of signify to you? And like, I don't know, were there any lessons learned for Shredly there?
Yeah, and there were a couple that we lost this year. Kitspo was another one.
Yeah.
And I think first of all, like we've talked about that as a team, like we're just so grateful for all our longevity, to have kind of gone through some ups and downs in the industry and still be around. I think proves a couple things about number one, your brand, your customers, and your product. And I don't think that any of those things were wrong with Machines. And so it was really disappointing to have seen that. And I don't know behind the scenes what decisions were made or why, but it did seem like it was kind of a corporate decision. And I think that shows both the power and the risk of partnering with bigger brands, right? We're all in this position where you are, as a small brand constantly looking you have to be incredibly strategic about your allocation of resources. So getting the opportunity that Machines got to partner with Specialized and then really kind of flourish after that is one of the benefits. And then one of the risks is that it's not up to you when it comes time to make some really hard decisions when the economy downturns. And that's what big companies have to do. It's not, they don't get to make these personal, heartfelt, soulful decisions that we do when your brand is full of soul. And so I think the learning there is just like there's risk and reward in going that route. And I can't say that we would have done it any differently. But it is a learning there to, and you see it across the board, all of the brands making really tough decisions, kind of eliminating their marketing teams or eliminating their ambassador teams. And you have seen that happen quickly. And I think that is the difference between being a public company and being a small brand that can kind of make your own decisions like that. And we see huge benefit in that for ourselves and are loving that we have that autonomy.
What do you have going on this fall at Shredly?
So we have some really fun launches. If you haven't heard of our romper, we kind of took the women's side of things by storm this summer. It was so fun to see how many women were having fun riding in our romper. So we actually have a full-length version of that launching soon, which we're really excited about. Yeah, so we have a full utility suit coming. We have
like
a
long
new
sleeve and long pant.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can go the whole year in a romper style. You don't ever have to give it up. And then we have some new pants that I'm really excited. They've kind of been a beast in terms of design. They've been in the works for over a year now. So those are finally launching and we're really excited about that. And then we are restocking our biker sham and our hipster sham. So our two chamois that did incredibly well this year that we kind of couldn't keep in stock are finally coming back. So those will be restocking in a couple weeks. And then we have a surprise, a little unexpected surprise for a new sport layer that will be launching as well. So, and a shacket. We had our shacket launch today, actually. That's a really fun insulated piece that's very crossover. So like a post-ride après layer. So lots of fun things happening, which makes the transition. It's always so sad when riding season starts to kind of come to an end. So to have these things to look forward through to kind of carry us through the fall and winter season is exciting.
Are the pants more gravity oriented or more like trail oriented?
They're trail oriented. They're the same fabric as our shorts, but they have some really fun detailing on them that make them a really fun There may be some moto inspiration
Okay.
there. I'll hint that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Fun. I have 3 final questions for you. But before
Okay.
that, where can people find Shredly? How can they come connect with you personally?
Yeah, so we're most active on Instagram. So
Okay.
at Shredly is where you can find us. And then Shredly.com is where you can find the whole collection. You can also find a dealer near you if you go to our website and go to the bottom and look on find a dealer. We also opened REI this year. They actually are the ones right now with the most stock of our rompers. So if you're still trying to get your hands on a romper, you can check out REI. But those are, yeah, the best places to find us. You can kind of find anyone local in your area that carries Shredly or what you're looking for on Shredly.com.
Which is huge. I think it's so huge being able to go to a local shop and actually find something for women. It's quite
For
rare.
sure. Yep. Being able to try it on. And then people love finding our traveling trailer because it has like one. Do you want me to pause while your video comes back?
Keep going.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So our traveling trailer has like one of everything also. So people like flock to that when they get the chance. And we will be at Rome Fest in Fruta. We're going to be at Women of Oz. I don't know when this will publish, but we'll be at Women of Oz this coming weekend. So September, I think 15th. And then we will be at Rome Sedona, which is the last year for Rome Sedona. So if you have not attended, it's such a great event, such a cool venue, incredible riding. So we're going to be there. And then we have one more retreat. So we are hosting our own retreats in partnership with Momentum Mountain Biking. And they're really wonderful, special weekends. We have skills included. And we have one last one this year. It's the last weekend in September, and that's in Park City. So that's a place where you can hang out with us all weekend.
Yeah, very fun. 3 final questions for you. First is what bike or bikes do you ride?
Oh, okay. So I have a Transition Scout, and I haven't been able to get rid of my Yeti my Yeti Betty when when they still made the Betty. Yeah. So I still have the SB5C, and I love that bike. But I like having the 2 very different bikes.
Yeah, awesome. Second question is what is your favorite place you've ever ridden your bike?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard question because I have been so lucky to ride in some awesome places. But New Zealand, I went on the Yeti gathering trip a number of years ago, and to be able to go from, I mean, New Zealand is so small that you can pretty much travel the whole thing in about 2 weeks. And we went from coast to coast, and we went through every geography that New Zealand has. So there was like high desert, and then what felt like you were in the Swiss Alps, or you were at the beach. And that was incredible just because of all of the diverse types and places that we got to ride. So that was definitely a standout in my mind.
Amazing. Final question is what is your favorite thing about riding your bike?
Oh my gosh, that's actually an easy answer. What I love about riding is that you have to focus on what you're doing. So for me, no matter how much I have going on, no matter how stressed I am or how much time I don't feel like I have to be riding, I love that I have to focus on what I'm doing. And I'll notice like I was not thinking about anything except for riding my bike. Like throughout the day, I'm multitasking and I'm thinking probably about 5 different things at the same time. But when I'm on my bike, I'm thinking about just that. And it's the most cleansing, clearing, being fully present feeling. And that's my favorite thing.